Hey Wargamers, Doug here. Before this video starts, I wanted to throw a little shout out to a project that I'm working on. You see, I am going full time into content creation, almost doubling what I know I can put out in a given week. But to do that, I need a new camera and some setup and some hardware, and so I started a GoFundMe. In the description down below, you can find a link to it. There's also a video next to that where you can find more details, and I kind of go into a lot more explanation of how it all works. And of course, on the GoFundMe page, there's detail as well. So please consider donating. Me and the patrons are all very excited about this next step for the channel, and it just means more content for you guys. So anyway, think about it, and I'll catch you later. Welcome Wargamers to the Colonel's Cheat Sheet. This is a new series I'm starting here on the channel that's designed on answering very basic and entry-level questions about the game, taking you from being a brand new player to more of an intermediate level. And the basic goal of this series is so that you can go to a local event or show up to a game day and not feel like you're being a burden to anybody. You can actually understand the game, what's going on, ways you can improve, and become a better opponent. Because there's a lot of anxiety about going to your first event. You want to make sure that you give, people you play against a good time, and that you yourself have a wonderful time and are stress-free and able to kind of commune with the community, I guess it's kind of a strange sentence, around you. And in this episode of the Colonel's Cheat Sheet, we're going to be talking all about battle plans. Frankly, why you want to use them, how you can read them to understand how to play the game better, and just kind of explore them so they kind of demystify a little bit and get you on the tabletop faster. Now, of course, battle plans come in a wide array of styles. They could be, more of a symmetrical thing that's more for matched play and tournaments and stuff like that, or on the other side where you don't care about points and you're just using them as a format to tell a great story about how one champion seized glory from another. And so, like I said, this is for new folks, so we're just going to ask the question really quick, what is a battle plan? At its core, a battle plan determines how one army can win over the other, as well as explain what area of the table you have to be able to do some deployments in, as well as some additional rules that we'll talk about in a little bit later. But really, honestly, the core crux is, how do I win this game? And when I say, how do I win this game, that's kind of a broad sentiment here, but there are different kinds of battle plans. So for example, if you're looking for a balanced one in terms of me and my opponent both have an equal opportunity to win the game and the same objectives within that game, you're looking for something that's probably going to be more matched play, where you kind of move to different objectives and you try to score points and deny your opponent that. There's also asymmetrical objectives, which is more the narrative stuff, where maybe you have an attacker and a defender and they have different goals in mind. The attacker wants to wipe away the defense, the defender either needs to stay alive or push back, or something like that. And lastly, if you just have a whole bunch of people and you're like, hey, let's just throw down some models and have a scrum, right? Just get in there and just start mashing each other. That's what open play is for, where the restrictions are more about, hey, how do we coordinate a multiplayer game with loose restrictions, if any, when it comes to what models we all bring. Now, honestly, when I tell most folks about battle plans, I tell them that it is the heart and soul of the game. And the reason I say that is because they allow you to tailor what kind of experience you want to have on that particular day with those particular friends. For example, I do go to tournaments, I enjoy them quite a bit, but that's not really the most fun that I have with Age of Sigmar. Instead, I like narrative battle plans using match play points because it's just the experience that I love. Now, understanding deployment and basically win conditions is obviously important, right? I don't have to tell you that. But that does one more thing, and that is that it makes armies play very differently. Cities of Sigmar is an army that's awesome. They have a lot of different buffs to shooting and things like that. If left to their own devices, they could sit in the middle of the board and just shoot anything. Like, they can achieve an ability where they can get to 2 up to hit, 2 up to wound and rend and damage and all this ridiculous stuff. However, when you're playing something kind of battle plan, whether it is narrative or match play, it does not matter. That army now has a different objective rather than just sit still and shoot. They need to go places, they need to move, and that pulls away the synergies that make that, almost that seemingly unbeatable wall. There are weaknesses to it, but seemingly, crushing thing that could be a negative play experience, and it poses a very difficult challenge to them. And then you'll see this a lot with different factions where, certain armies are not nearly as, we'll use the word killy, meaning they don't have a lot of damage output. However, they have a lot of mobility, and so they're fantastic at playing towards the objectives. And this ebb and flow, push and pull of strengths and weaknesses is really what makes Age of Sigmar so fun. And in fact, armies that don't seem to have a lot of value, or people complain about them, or specific units that people complain about, in the right battle plans, in the right scenario, they can really shine. But that is enough of the theory of battle plans. Let's get practical. I think that's what I like the most here. What we're looking at on the screen right now is the Battle for the Past battle plan. It is from the last GHB, just because I haven't bought the EPUB version of 2020 yet, but bear with me. Basically, we're just going to be kind of walking through the anatomy of this sucker. I start with Battle of the Past because it is, quite frankly, one of my favorite match play scenarios. It's what I use to do demos with. It is very, very easy to understand, new person friendly, and it's very clear and concise. It also is symmetrical because it is a match play format, and that means it's frankly less busy than some other ones where, you know, certain rules exist to tell a very specific narrative or something like that. Now we're going to walk through the sections here, talking about pitched battle format. All the GHBs have this little section here, and basically that is how to make an army, right? How do you and your opponent work together to create a fair and balanced system to the best of, you know, the game's abilities to give you that. And basically that just has to do with army construction. We're going to cover those kinds of things in future videos within this series, so we'll kind of move along from there. Now next up are the objectives, and this literally tells you where the objectives go. It can be anywhere on the map. They could come in later. It just kind of gives you an understanding of this battle is fought to control for objectives. That is the core of this battle plan. And then it tells you exactly where to put them. Next is setup. So how are the forces deployed? And I will be honest with you, this is a bit more relevant when it comes to narrative games, because those are typically asymmetrical, meaning they're not the same deployment styles. Whereas with match play games, you're almost always going to have the same thing. These are, you know, these two triangles here for deployment are equidistant from each other. They're the same amount of space, that kind of thing. But setup is more important when it comes to different types of formats. Now, this battle plan from last year doesn't have it, but in the new one, they actually have a thing called battle length, which is self-explanatory. It just literally tells you how long the game goes on for, how many turns. We have glorious victory as the section, and this is pretty clear. It's just answering the question, okay, how does someone win this game, right? And that might be something like at the end of the 5th battle round, whoever has the most points, and it's telling you points are the key to winning this game. This glorious victory section is the most important part of a battle plan. The deployments and that kind of stuff, that'll all change year to year because Games Workshop likes to mix up kind of what the active battle plans are. For example, Battle for the Past in GHB 2020, it's the exact same map, but the deployments are a bit different, and that's important. But Glorious Victory is something that no matter what format you're playing in, if it's a match play, narrative, or open play thing, it just simply tells you how do you win the game. Now, in a in a scenario that uses victory points, you'll also have this little section right here that literally just says victory points, and basically it's saying, if you win through victory points, this is how you earn or score them. And you need to pay attention to the values that it gives you. For example, Battle for the Past, this is why I love it as an example, is that it really hits all these various notes. You get 1 point for the objective in your deployment zone, 2 points for the ones that no one they're not in anyone's deployment zone, and 4 for your opponents. And so this makes it extremely beneficial to you to try and be very aggressive, to get into your opponent's zones, steal theirs, but also you have this little gnawing feeling in the back of your head that they're going to try to do the same thing. So I need to figure out how to defend mine while seizing theirs. And of course, the 2 points in the middle are up for grabs as both of your armies careen towards one another. And that, honestly, that information we gleaned straight from the rules themselves. That is telling us how to play Battle for the Past. Again, this is why I use it for demos. It's clean. Like this is not a busy, intense thing, nor is the information given. Instead, it's just a matter of how do these armies work in a way that I need to A, move and be somewhere, because like I said, that Cities of Sigmar army, they would sit right back here and just shoot you to death. but instead now I need to move. I have objectives to claim, but also a very important one to defend. 4 points in this is huge if your opponent is able to get your objective in your deployment zone. So just kind of keep that in mind. And as I went through these different little headings here, just kind of be aware that what they're collectively doing is telling a story about how you should play this battle plan. So I just went over how to play Battle for the Past, being aggressive, but also keeping in mind for defense back on your objective. And then it'll change army to army because different ones have different strengths and terrain pieces and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, focus on objectives and be as aggressive as possible is really beneficial here. Now I wanted to show an example of something else, and we're not going to go into as much detail on this one, but I wanted to show another example of a matched play one that operates a bit differently. So for example, we see the objectives things. This battle is fought to control 3 objectives which are set up during the battle, so they don't even start on the board. And then it says see Star Strike. This is where you get your additional rules for exactly how and when the objectives come onto the table. It's round 2, okay? So that's nuts. You have a full round of running at each other, trying to punch each other in the face. However, you don't know where the objective is coming, and so that incentivizes you to spread out to have troops wherever it might come down. So kind of think about that just a little bit. And of course, the other stuff's the same in terms of glorious victory. Whoever has the most points wins, and then victory points is this is how you score them. And so that's a very interesting thing. So in Star Strike, there's a main objective and 2 kind of secondary ones that are worth just a hair less. Obviously, you want the main objective that comes down first, but this is kind of a thing where they're explaining to you how this game's going to go, and you can really easily deduce, okay, I need to have some units in my army that can move fast, that they can just dart to wherever that thing lands and hold it down until the rest of my forces can move and kind of support them. But what about narrative gaming? And this is an interesting one, and I'm just going to show one example from the Auric War Clans Battle Tome. Fun fact, if you didn't know, every Battle Tome has a battle plan inside of it, so you can kind of tell a story for the faction that book is representing. So I just picked a random one that I had the file for, and we're looking at the Auric War Clans one called Beast Hunt. And I'm not going to go through the sections one by one, but just some core differences here as you're looking at this. The big difference here, deployment. I'm going to zoom in here, is instead of having equal types of deployment space and that kind of thing, obviously one is very, very different from the other. In this story, there's the Bone Splitters territory and the Hunted's territory, representing the beast or the army they're trying to encircle and crush. So deployment is very different. The only thing I would suggest when it comes to narrative gaming and the different deployment stuff is just have some grace, because sometimes the deployment sizes aren't super conducive to some of those really, really large bases like Archaon or something. And that's basically the only rule I got, is just kind of have some flexibility with that. As far as how the game works, like I said, it's not symmetrical. There's an attacker and defender in this. Like I said, they call them Bone Splitters player and the Hunted. But they just have different goals, and that's kind of the difference thing. So we'll look up here. What are the goals of each of these? Oh, I lied. I was actually on the next page. The Bone Splitters player immediately wins a major victory if all the monsters in the Hunted army are slain. The Hunted player immediately wins a major victory if every unit in the Bone Splitter army is destroyed. And then it kind of goes into more detail what happens if neither of those 2 conditions are met. Now, of course, this is a thematic story. The Bone Splitters love hunting monsters, so that's kind of the thing that they're going for. But in many, many narrative things, especially the ones you find in the General's Handbook, or in supplements like Wrath of the Everchosen or something like that, the battle plans don't feature, you have to have all of the monsters in the whole world. So don't let that dissuade you. I'm more just pointing out that these battle plans can be used to craft very specific narratives, and that's exactly what they are great for. Now, one other thing I want to talk about here, and let me zoom back up, is the use of special rules. So for example, we see the things that we saw before as far as setup and glorious victory, that kind of thing, but then we have some additional rules. For example, one called Thrill of the Hunt. Don't take battle shock tests for units in the Bone Splitter's army. Savage Beasts add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by monsters in the Hunted's army. And this is kind of how they're balancing the story out of the Bone Splitters aren't scared of the big monster. They're so excited to go in there and fight it. Likewise, the monsters are not normal. They are super agitated by all these annoying orcs, and they're just going to crush them, and that's why they get the bonuses. Now, of course, this battle takes place in Gur. The following realm of battle rules apply to this battle, and so they give you some more rules that way. A lot of these you can add, subtract, you can ignore, you can do whatever you'd like to make it a more compelling game. But the fact of the matter is, everything is right there for you. And so what might look intimidating to see this 2-page spread of rules is actually quite simple. It really is just, hey, we want to tell the story of a bunch of monsters getting attacked by a horde of bone splitters. One thing you'll often see in Battletome battle plans specifically is if the faction has a terrain piece, usually there's some mission that involves it, whether it's like destroying the terrain for the attacker defender or erecting like an idol or something like that. Those are the kind of missions you'll often see. So I think they're really cool. They basically just give you a way to use all the cool models in the book, right? So if you find an army you love and you're passionate about, you can go hog wild into making a really compelling story on the tabletop with them. Now, when it comes to, like I said, this is for new folks. When it comes to starting to use battle plans and kind of getting comfortable with them, first of all, I always go with what's free. What's free is in your battle tome. I mean, if you've already paid for it, you have the rules for your armies theoretically. Absolutely. There's also free ones online and in the core book for Age of Sigmar. There's some very, very basic ones. What I typically tell people when I'm giving demos and that kind of stuff and like trying to get people into the game is I always tell them to stick with the matched play ones until you're comfortable with reading the battle plan. Remember that first one I showed you, Battle for the Pass, the deployment map is not busy at all. There's no special rules. There's just these are what the objectives are and where they are, and here's how many points you get for each of them. Person with the highest score at the end of the 5th round wins. Like it's a very simple and easy to understand thing, and simplicity is important because as you're getting used to your army, you can look at what's in your battle tome and be like, okay, I didn't have someone who could move fast and take the objective to the right. What options do I have, maybe for expanding later, that could let me do that? And so that's very important. The minimalist style of many of the match play battle plans allows you to very clearly see solutions to problems in your battle tome. And as you kind of get more comfortable with the game and more comfortable with your unit's abilities and movements and model placements and all that kind of stuff, which we'll talk about later in different episodes of this series, you can really gain a deeper understanding of the game. The ones that I suggest, and I took these from the General's Handbook 2020, I'm just going to give you the names, I'm not going to show them to you. But Battle for the Pass, Star Strike, Shifting Objectives, and the Blade's Edge. The Blade's Edge is quite possibly the coolest battle plan ever. It was actually initially released in the Forbidden Power book as a narrative battle plan, but it was so great and so well balanced that they brought it over, and I absolutely love it. So go check that one if you or someone in your gaming group has the 2020 General's Handbook. Now I kind of want to end here on just kind of reinforcing a note that I hit on earlier, and that is, how do battle plans change armies' effectiveness? And this is a big topic because when you look online and you're asking questions about the nature of an army and that kind of stuff, it's easy to have a bunch of people tell you that your faction sucks at blank, right? Or you see it a lot with like Nighthaunt specifically because they are not super killy, but they're annoying in their resiliency. Meaning they're pretty good at it with their ethereal rules and their dependency on heroes and that kind of stuff. And so the ebb and flow of what makes a faction effective or what they're good at, frankly, changes based on what the battle plans are like. If you need something where you can drop units anywhere on the board, Nighthaunt and Stormcast are pretty stinking awesome because they have their quote unquote not deep strike from the sky, and they can pretty much be set up just about anywhere. And so they have some cool tools that are in their toolbox to be able to play objectives in a different way than many other armies. Now I'm using Nighthaunt as an example, but that goes for any faction. We already mentioned the cities of Sigmar, that they would love to just form a little turtle made of gun and just sit there on a point and shoot stuff, but that's just simply not how the game works. You need to move around, you need to seize objectives, you need to push back the enemy, you need to hold them off. All these things are happening at the same time. I get a lot of questions from folks who, they say like, we're really struggling because I play X faction, my buddy plays Y, and I just get crushed every single time. He doesn't have fun winning that way, and I don't have fun losing that hard. What can we do? And then I ask questions, and they're not using a battle plan. I'm like, well, not every faction is good at running up and punching someone in the face. That's kind of how the game balance works, is that there's different skills and abilities and that kind of stuff. And, effectiveness changes and flows with every battle tome or edition or battle plan. But the fact is, all these armies are, in theory, really good at something different than every other army. So finding a way that you can use your faction to maximize their effectiveness in battle plans is pretty essential. And that's kind of one of the first steps to unlocking going to your first event and not feeling stressed. A good tournament organizer or event organizer, however you want to word that, is going to let you know what the battle plans will be well in advance. And when I say well in advance, it might even just be like a week or two. I'm not putting out there that they have to know a year in advance or anything like that, but they give you an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm going to a 1-day, 3-round event. We're playing these 3 things in these 3 realms, which we'll talk about in a different video. But we can sit here and we can learn how to play these things, which are usually matched play, based on the General's Handbook. And so you can just sit there, look at them, and kind of think and play some practice games leading up to the event and get comfortable with them. Again, they're not complicated. They simply just require you to think about, okay, that's how I win the game. How can I achieve that? Or what is my opponent going to do to try and achieve that? And so these are just basic questions you can ask. Take the time. If somebody posts an event, go there, even if it's your first flippin' day, with enough models to be able to actually play Age of Sigmar. I don't care. It's just a great community event. But in the time leading up to that event, be sure to study up on the battle plans. This way you're less stressed when you go to your first event. You feel pretty confident as far as what the rules go. Maybe you can't win it. Who cares? You can still go there and have a wonderful time. Of course, when I'm recording, the little chat box shows up with a zombie as someone subscribed, and that's so funny to me. But anyway, thank you, friends. I hope you found this video at least useful in some capacity. If there is a subject regarding Age of Sigmar that maybe you've been too afraid to ask or something like that, or some basic building block of knowledge that you'd like explored, go ahead and leave it in the comments down below and we will absolutely get to it. This is the Colonel's Cheat Sheet, my little intro so that people can get used to using the General's Handbook, which is of course the leveled up version of this. So thank you all so much and happy wargaming.